Hi, welcome along to Barbecue Life UK, where great barbecue doesn't have to cost a fortune. Today we're doing a leftovers cook, and we're going to be using the brisket flat leftover from the brisket that I cooked a few videos ago, and we're going to be making brisket burritos. So today we're doing brisket burritos. So I saved the flat out of the brisket that I cooked a few videos ago, backpacked it. Again, using the vac packer that I used in a few videos ago. So this has been in the freezer since then. So it's been in the freezer for probably about a month now, from when I first done that video till now. So I love that vac packer because you've got no freezer burn or anything on there. So if you want to check out that vac pack video, I'll make sure I leave a link in the description below and stick an iCard up in the top corner about how good it is. Anyway, back to the brisket. So we've got this flat. We're going to reheat it on the plancha from still smoking on the Aldi Kamado. We've got a few other bits to put in with it, and we're going to make ourselves a wicked burrito. So we're using some different herbs and spices today, all from the Rusty Barbecue Company. So we've got them behind me. So we've got habanero and lime out of his Mexican range. We have got al pastor out of the Mexican range, and lastly but by no means least, we've got the chili verde out of his Mexican range. Now all three of these rubs are wicked. We're going to be using all three of them in this cook, but for different parts of the cook, so make sure that you stick around to see what we use where and why. First thing we need to make for this cook is just a really simple tomato salsa. So I've got some tomatoes that I've grown at home in the greenhouse. We've quite a nice haul out of them this year, so I just want to chop them up quite small. So I've quartered them up and then sliced up them quarters so that they're quite small, because we don't want nice big chunks of tomato, we want little bites of that. And move them to one side into a bowl, and then we're going to take a red onion, and we're going to use about a quarter of a red onion, nice and thinly sliced, and then again we're going to dice that up really small. Get that into the bowl, where we're going to add about half a teaspoon of dried coriander leaf. If you've got fresh coriander, then that is even better, but I've only got dried, so we're going to get that in there. If you want to salt and pepper it, you can, but I know that there's a lot of other salt and pepper going on in the rest of this cook, and everything's going to muddle together, so I'm only going to use the smallest amount of salt in there, not very much at all. Now we want to go in with a squeeze of half a lime, so we get that in, and some olive oil, and then we're just going to muddle that through together. Get that in the fridge for at least an hour while you sort all your other bits out, because we want that to really, all of the flavours to infuse together and rehydrate that coriander leaf if you're using the dried. So just get that in the fridge. That will last in the fridge for a couple of days anyway if you do want to make it well in advance, but at least an hour is ideal. So the next thing we've got to make up is our marinade for our mushrooms. So I'm going to be putting some mushrooms in this burrito. I absolutely love the meaty texture of mushrooms, and it's going to work really well with a brisket. So we're using the al pastor, which is there we go. Using the al pastor in this. So about a teaspoon, half a teaspoon. It's quite hot. There's 7 different chilies in this rub. So depending on how hot you want it, depends on how much you want to put in there. So I'm going about 3/4 of a teaspoon, I suppose, into a little dish. And then we want to put a nice glug of olive oil in there and some tomato paste. So this helps really intensify the meatiness of mushrooms by putting the tomato paste in there, and it works really well. So get that into the bowl together, little dish, whatever, and give that a good mix up until you get sort of this consistency. And this is what we want to put over our mushrooms. So I've got some really thin sliced mushrooms. So I chopped them in half and then I sliced them quite thinly. I used about 5 mushrooms for this cook because they are going to sweat down and get quite small as the cook goes on. So we want to get them into a bowl together with that mixture that we've just made up, and just let that cover all of the mushrooms before we get them onto the flat top. The mushrooms will be the first thing we're cooking, but we've got to prepare our other things first. So we're going to get this brisket out of the vac pack and pull it and chop it and get it into some smaller pieces. I want to add just a small amount of oil to there just to let things stick, and onto that we're going to be going the chili verde rub. So this works really, really well. Out of the three, this is probably my favourite rub. It's a little bit more mellow than the others, but there's a lot going on. It's really fantastic and worth giving a go. So we're just going to sprinkle that over the brisket, and then when we're cooking that on the flat top, we're going to be adding a bit of beef dripping in there as well, just to add a little bit more beefy flavour. And then the next thing that we need to be getting ready is I'm using a black bean and sweet corn mix. So I've just got a can of black beans I've drained off. I'm going to put them into a bowl with a small amount, about a handful of some frozen sweet corn. And then we're going to add our last rub, which is the habanero lime, and that is what's going to be going on to these. So these are quite moist already, these beans, so we're not going to need any oil or anything. So about a teaspoon sprinkled over them, mix it through. If you want to add a little bit more, you can. And that's our three things prepped, and now we are ready to cook. Interaction is massively important to a small YouTube channel like myself, so if you could take the time to like the video or leave me a comment, or even subscribe to the channel, maybe even turn on notifications so you don't miss any other content from Barbecue Life UK, all of that would be appreciated. Cheers. So now we've got all the prep work done, it's time to light our Kamado. So I've already lit this off camera, just used a couple of wax woodies as per normal, and some new charcoal in the bottom. So once we've got a nice bed of charcoal in the bottom, you want to dial your vents in for about 150 to 100 to 200, so 170-ish is about right for this cook. You don't want a screaming hot plancha because you're just going to burn everything before you've cooked it, but you also don't want it too low because then you're going to release the water in the things like the mushrooms, and it's just going to boil away rather than like get a little bit of colour on the bottom. So we've got the Kamado set, it's dialed in. I've got the 15-inch steel plancha in there from Steel Smoking. There'll be a link to his website in the description below in case you want to pick one up. And the first thing we're going to cook is our mushrooms. So we're just going to pour it out of the bowl that you saw me mix it in earlier on, get that onto the plancha, get a nice sizzle going, and once we've got that on there, I'm going on with a small amount of beef fats. It's like beef dripping, and that's just going to help. One, it's going to flavour the mushrooms, and two, it's going to help things from not sticking. So we just pop that on. We want to spread it out so that we've got a nice even cooking surface and everything's got a contact point with the plate. And we're going to shut the lid just for a couple of minutes, keeping them vents in that same position as they were. And by keeping the keeping the lid shut, you're going to cook from the top as well as cooking from the heat below, so it's going to cook much quicker. After a couple of minutes, open it up, toss everything through using a spatula, or if you want to use tongs, it's completely up to you, whatever works for you. We're just going to keep it moving sort of every couple of minutes, shutting the lid in between to let that radiant heat cook from the top as well. And after, I suppose, about 6 minutes, these are going to be done. So you can tell that by the consistency and the way that they are. You know what a cooked mushroom looks like if you eat mushrooms. If you don't eat mushrooms, a nice substitute on this is something like peppers. You can do the same marinade on there and it works really well as well with them. So these are cooked now. We want to get them off, get them into a bowl and get them wrapped with a bit of tin foil over the top to keep them warm. So check the temperature of our plancha again. We're still sitting where we need to be sitting, and we're going to go on with our beans and sweet corn mixture. So pour that across again, spread it out. We've got a much bigger surface area cooking these ones. Now the outside of the plancha's got a bit more heat in it than the inside, so we want to make sure that we're moving from the outer edges in and the inner out as we're cooking. And now the reason that the outer edge has got a high temperature is because it's not had anything cooked on it. So when we put the mushrooms in the middle of the plancha before, they have sucked some of the heat out of that plancha in order to cook. And the outer edges haven't had that yet, so that is why we've got sort of a cooler zone in the middle and a hotter zone on the outside. And same thing as with the mushrooms, make sure you shut the lid in between turning them over, and every 2 or 3 minutes just go in there with your spatula and just keep them moving outside in is generally the best to go until they've really firmed up. Now, depending on how you like your beans to be, I like mine to really start to cream up a bit, where they've cooked until the skins on the beans are starting to split. A lot of the beans were already split before we even started out this can of beans, but if they're not, then you can cook them for a bit longer and they will start to split, and then you get that creamier consistency, which is what I like with beans, and it works really well. Gives another consistency throughout this wrap. So again, about sort of 6-7 minutes in, these are cooked, so we want to be getting them off into a separate bowl. Again, covered with not cling film, covered with tin foil, just to keep them warm while we cook the brisket. So our brisket, and I'm going to get that on the hot plate. Again, we're going to go on with some beef fat, so just to keep this moist and stop things from sticking, and it's gonna rehydrate that the brisket as well as adding more flavour. So we just want to keep that moving again, outside in, and this cooking process is a little bit longer because we want to make sure that we've cooked this meat all the way through, because we don't want to get food poisoning. So this is about a 10-minute cook. Every 2 minutes or so we're going in, we're scraping off that plancha because it is going to start to stick, and moving outside in. If you want to add a little bit more beef fat, you can. If things are starting to stick too much, you just stick that on, work it from the outside and work your way in again. Just keep it moving, and after sort of 10 minutes you can tell that it's cooked. The consistency of it has changed. It's really starting to break down, where it's brought itself up into temperature, and we've raised its internal temperature higher than before, so it is breaking down into a pulled brisket now, rather than the slices that we had when we cooked the brisket first time round. So now we're going to get that off, get that into a bowl, and it's time to start building our wrap. So I've already heated these wraps up indoors because we've got chips with this, and it was just easier to heat the wraps indoors. But we could have, in theory, we could have just placed a wrap onto that hot plancha for a minute or two, probably not even that, just let it warm up, and then they become a bit more flexible for building. But as I say, mine have been heated up indoors. So we've got a wrap. Now you can put anything else in it you like. I'm not going lettuce today. A lot of people probably would. I'm not doing lettuce today. I'm just keeping it to the 4 things that we have made out here. And then the other thing that I'll probably do on my second one when I make it is I'll probably add some cheese. So we're going on with that pulled brisket first on the bottom, and then we're going to get our mushrooms, put them on the top. Make sure we spread them out so we've got a bit of everything in every bite. Then we're going on with them beans, again spreading them from top to bottom, and then we're going to put our salsa on the top of that. Now I love the lime in this salsa. It really cuts through the spice for everything else, and the acidity in that lime helps cool the spice. That's why we like a nice acidic kick in things like this. So we're going to wrap this up. It's not going to look pretty. Trying to wrap a wrap on camera is an absolute pain in the butt, but we've got it wrapped up, and we're going to slice through the middle so you can have a nice cross section shot, so you can see all them different layers through there, and it's time to give it a taste. So already know this is going to be amazing. Let's get a bite. Oh, all them different textures going on in there. I love the texture of that pulled brisket, and then the soft, almost creaminess of them beans. The lime cuts throughout that salsa, and then the heat builds on you. When you first put it in your mouth, it wasn't massively hot. I can feel it building, working its way from the front of my tongue towards the back. These are banging, I love them. So if you like what we're doing here at Barbecue Life UK, then please do subscribe to the channel. Make sure you like the video and leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. Thank you for watching.